before. But I have either recast them or sort of split them off from other goals. So if it looks like it's a new goal or item to work on, that's because I've pulled it apart. And so I'm going to go through each of these just to make sure that you're clear on the requirements and where they came from. So item number 5 is on positive behavior interventions and supports and crisis response and violence prevention. So this is an item that was existing for the past year. And the way it was cast last year was positive behavior interventions and supports, something that the district already engages in. What really happens is different across buildings, and we would expect that it would be a little bit different across buildings in terms of the fidelity of implementation and how it's done in elementary versus middle and high school. But the really big thing that happened this year is I wouldn't say that we paused PBIS, but we didn't really move forward with a lot of that planning and retraining because we started work on crisis response and violence prevention. That was really good. The team in Davenport did a great job of working on the crisis response and violence prevention plan, pulling together a community group to serve as a vetting group for crisis response and prevention. Really, I think these two things go hand in hand. So we just embedded them into one corrective action. We've put some aspirational dates here for getting our milestones done for this year. And I say aspirational, not because I don't think the district can do it, but because we understand that timelines for this next year may just be dictated to us a little bit by what happens with the virus in the state. So we may, in fact, be doing some online learning this year or some hybrid learning with kids, some kids in school and some kids online. And so all of these dates are going to be a little bit aspirational. So that's really where goal number 5 came from. So it's a carryover from last year, and we've just massaged it a little bit to try to fit what we would like to accomplish this year. Oops, scrolled a little too much there. Goal number 6 is about board development. And so this is also, it's a holdover from last year, but what we did is actually flesh out a little bit of in a little bit more detail, some of the things that we'd like to be able to help you as a local board work through. And ideally, we would work with the Iowa Association of School Boards. I know we've had the opportunity to have some workshops with IASB, and what we'd like to do is continue that this year. So I have not called IASB and asked them about any of this. I'd like to see what your response is and then what the State Board of Education has to say about it. But our plan is that board development this year would focus specifically on fiduciary responsibility, some general boardsmanship training, which they offer obviously wonderful workshops in that, some database decisions so that you could be really focusing on looking at student data at your board meetings. Disproportionality, because I know that you have been wanting to get to the disproportionality work, and then sustainable correction of noncompliance, because at some point we really will go away and you'll want to be able to sustain all of these corrections that you have made into your system.
Amy, let me interrupt just for a second. Clyde, and could you mute your phone, please? Thank you.
Actually, I thought it was muted. How about now?
That'll work.
Is it muted?
No, I can hear you. If I can't hear you, it's muted. Go ahead.
How about now?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Amy.
All right. So goal number 7 is the corrective action around disproportionality. What we did this year is, this isn't new work. This is the same stuff that we had written in last year. What we did is we merged the disproportionality, multi-tiered system of support, and early literacy all into one corrective action, because in reality, it's all the same work. Disproportionality is not something that you confront with like the magic disproportionality intervention. It is something that you work on by addressing multi-tiered system of supports in your district, and by addressing early literacy, and then also by addressing up above, we had positive behavior interventions and supports. And so it's really all part and parcel of the same thing. And it's not just special education or just general education. This is an entire system that you need to focus on. It's also, it runs, the gamut of subgroups. So it's also not as though you can just focus on children of color or special education, advanced learners, etc. It's really holistic. So this is kind of a systems goal that we have here. And so we do want to actually get to the point this year where we fully enact all of that work that the core group of central office folks and principals have done on the district self-assessment, and continue to take it the next step and think about the things that can be taken off of everyone's plate at the district, and the things that can be really focused on to push the multi-tiered system of supports to the next level, and get the district to where you really want to be in terms of early literacy. So that's the corrective action for number 7. For number 8, we talk about family and community engagement, and this was also in last year's. We talked about specifically last year the expert coaches working with the district to work on family and community engagement. And what we're looking at here is specifically working around racial and socioeconomic bias as they affect the schools. So this should help some with the disproportionality. And so, again, we would like to be able to recommend some expert coaches for this. Goal 9 is about finances. And we understand that you are working with and under the School Budget Review Committee, and you are going to adhere to all of the requirements that are set by that committee. What we wanted to do is make a connection between what is done for the SBRC and what is reported to the state board. They're very important to each other in this situation, because even though we have an internal staff member at the department who will give reports to the state board on what happens with Davenport or any other district, for example, I think it's going to be a lot richer conversation for the state board to understand what's happening with Davenport. If we have this listed as a goal for you to actually work with an expert coach to ensure that you're doing all the things that you need to do for the SBRC, and then telling the state board how that's going so that they can understand how your financial situation impacts your ability to do all the rest of these things. And then that expert coach can actually provide you with a format to provide monthly updates to your local board, so that you can have district central office staff coming to monthly board meetings, giving you information on the financial health of the district. And when you come to the state board meetings on a monthly basis, you're able to give the state board updates on your comfort with the financial condition of the district. So I think what we're trying to do there is tie all of it together: SBRC, state board, local board, central office. Number 10 here is about database decision making. And what we want to do here is provide information on how to best use data in making decisions about what the district leadership and the board want to accomplish by using the best student data available. So district has access to tons of student achievement data, social emotional learning data. And I just want to be completely honest with you. You haven't been using a lot of it at your board meetings. And I don't think that that is because you haven't wanted to necessarily. You have been so focused on finances for the better part of the 2.5 years that I've been working with you, that there hasn't been a lot of space on your agendas for district data on how kids are achieving, bullying and harassment, things that might inform policy decisions about the strategic path that you want to take the district in. And so this is actually a way for us to insert some opportunity for you to look at district data, look at the state report card, for instance, that's available on the district. Think about data that you have available to you on a more frequent basis. I know that you have it all because I've talked with the district staff about this. And it's just a matter of thinking about how the board and the district administration want to make use of that information. Item 11 is about special education sustainability, and this is something I know Sandy Schmitz will be vital to helping with. When we were visiting in February, back before things were kind of thrown into chaos here in the state, we did a review of some IEPs, and then we did another specific review of some IEPs that were specific to kids with behavior needs. And so you do have some IEPs that need to have corrections for noncompliance made. So we pulled 27 IEPs and we have 38 individual issues of noncompliance that need to be corrected on those. That is not a statistically valid sample. So we were doing really just a spot check to make sure that you had some form of sustainability. So I wouldn't read too much into that. We wanted to make sure that we looked at some of the IEPs. Those that we pulled for behavior came back really good. They didn't have anything that we needed to have corrected on them. And so the behavior assessments and the behavior plans on those actually looked quite good. And so this goal is all about ensuring that all of the hard work that Sandy and all of your special education staff have done in correcting the special education citations that you received in 2018 stays in place, and that you never find yourself in a position where you have that many IEPs to correct or that you're awarding compensatory education. So that's something that we'll be working directly with Sandy on, I'm hoping, and congratulations on hiring her in her new position. And then finally, goal 12 is about bullying and harassment. So when we came in February again, we interviewed lots of parents. We did a parent survey, and we got considerable feedback about bullying and harassment in the district. And so we wanted to do some work with you this year on ensuring that you have bullying and harassment policies that are aligned with what's required by state law. The complaint form is easily accessible, it's consistent across buildings, and that everyone knows how to access the form. So that sums it up. We have 12 goals, gone over everything. I'm going to stop sharing so that I can see all of your faces. or your little circles with your initials in them. And I want to just take a little time to answer any questions you have about what could be in store either for the state board meeting on Thursday or for the next year.
Director Beck?
I have several questions, Amy, and I really appreciate you being here tonight and summarizing this for us. So I guess I'm going to ask 4 questions. The first one is, why would PBIS be different from building to building if it is being done with fidelity? Shouldn't it be fairly similar from building to building? I understand different levels, elementary, junior high, high school, but wouldn't we want it to be fairly similar from building to building? We have a lot of students that move buildings and, they can't be learning new rules every time.
Right, absolutely. And so I was referring to differences that would be expected from, I guess, grade level to grade level.
Okay.
So elementary, middle, high, that would look a little different. So your posted expectations would look different for grade level to grade level. You do want it to look pretty much the same from building to building. So if you went from one elementary to the next, the expectations should look the same. You should be able to go in with, as a stranger and say, yes, they're doing PBIS here. I can see that.
Okay. Thank you. So my second question is on the item on the board workshops. So we've already done a few workshops with the IASB. Are your suggestions new or just part of that same process that it got cut short because of the pandemic, but are those new or is it part of the same?
Yeah, so these aren't new so much as a continuation of board development.
Okay.
And there are also suggestions. So if you all have suggestions about things that you think that the board needs more or different than those that we have suggested, last time that this plan was created, it was a back and forth between the district and the state board. And I am sure that state board members would be open to suggestion about what the board needs.
Okay. So my next question is on item 10, which is the database decision making. So there have been a few times that we've asked for data to back up things that people have said about this program or that program, and we typically haven't gotten the data we have asked for. And I guess part of it seems to be the program jumping, I'm putting that in air quotes, that we seem to have been doing a lot of in the past. I know when I first joined the board almost 3 years ago, there were 17 different things going on at 17 different buildings, and no one was actually completing a program to the point that they were collecting data to inform whether that program should be instituted in all the other schools or something like that. So is that sort of geared towards, will that help us with that issue, that program jumping issue? Or next shiny thing issue, I guess is what I should call it.
Yes, it can. I think the other thing that can help with going on to the next shiny thing, and it's not just a Davenport issue. I think it's an all education issue. We all do that. We all jump around to the things that we think will work. Mm-hmm. Is the review of all of the district initiatives or programs that Davenport staff members have done with some of our staff members when we have come to visit. So in February, Barbara Oland and Brad Niebling facilitated a work session with a number of Davenport staff members going through the self-assessment process. And that process really does get at, so how many reading initiatives do you really have, or reading programs? Same thing for behavior. Exactly how many behavior things are you doing? And so you can list them all, and then you ask yourself the second question, which is the harder one. How many of these do you actually have data of showing efficacy for?
Right. Okay, so So we are doing some of that, though.
Yes.
Okay. So my last question is about the bullying and harassment. So two things. About 2.5 years ago, I think right after I started on the board, the policy committee had a discussion on complaint forms. And making sure that it seemed to be sort of a generic complaint form that was for anyone, an employee with a complaint about a supervisor or a parent with a complaint about bullying or something like that. I don't know what happened to it. And then we also just redid our bullying policy because of the citation on it about just a few months ago. So is there something different? Sorry, I'm asking as the policy chair committee. Is there something different that we need to be doing with that policy, or is this more of a website issue?
The policy is fine if you've redone it. And I say that because I am not the person who typically checks all the policies. Janet Boyd is.
Okay.
But this is more looking at ensuring that on the website, so kids say they know where to go and staff members say they know how to report it. And investigators say they know how to conduct the investigation. And so it's ensuring that everybody kind of knows their role and is comfortable doing it.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's all I have for now. So
you're welcome.
Director Gosa.
Mr. President, I just had a few questions. Miss Amy Williamson, I do appreciate you joining us tonight and going over all this. I have a few questions. I mean, I've asked you some, and I wanted to ask some more. I'm going to go into the disproportionality end of it. Our status says on hold now. Is that we're on hold with what we're doing from the state or the district? We just haven't moved forward?
Excellent question. I should have pointed out all of those status columns while I was going over them. So that one was actually placed on hold when the state, we at the State Department determined that we would not be inviting experts in because we thought it was too soon to start on that particular goal. So this was about November or December of 2019, because we were concerned that taking on the crisis response and violence prevention work at the same time as trying to do PBIS and early literacy was going to be too much and just overwhelming to staff and students, really. So that's why it's still marked as on hold. I think that we'll probably take some feedback from you all, from Davenport staff and from the state board on, do we start these all as working items again in the fall? Because it's not truly on hold right now. I think that we can open it back up as a working item for the fall, because we are working on the PBIS and the crisis response portion that's simply listed in the one above.
Okay. And you actually answered one of my other questions, because I was going to ask about the national consultants. I remember hearing that we were going to have come in and work with our district, but you answered that question, that the state's kind of holding back on that to start that work. I think for myself, one of the biggest things about the disproportionality piece of it, we don't talk about it. So I've been putting board requests forward to have discussions on it more, because I think no one knows like a clear definition of what disproportionality is, because you can interpret it in so many different ways. I think kind of getting a little guidance on that, and then a little direction or facilitation when we have discussions on it, I think that would be very helpful, because quite honestly, I don't think a lot of people understand what disproportionality is. I'll just say that. And I mean, I've even had conversations with Tom Lane about it yourself, and trying to get something figured out on what the best approach is. But I think the best approach is to get everyone to have a discussion on it so people can give their different perspectives on what it is to them, and then we can kind of go forward from there. Um, and now I done lost my train of thought, but I I'm totally drawing a blank here. Oh, so with these citations, obviously some of them are from last year and stuff. I just want to make sure that my fellow colleagues on the board understand that this is stuff that we still have to be working on and should have been working on, even though all this other stuff has came up. It's still something that's been lingering that needs to be addressed and taken care of, because I don't want to portray to the state board or even the SBRC, because they did, give us a huge relief that we're not taking this stuff serious and we are moving forward with it. Um, I guess for myself too, to add to this, I mean, you got like the status, and then you got some are working it on hold. I guess I would kind of like to see what percentage do you think we're at. Is there areas that as a board we can ask more questions and get more discussion going to well, lack of a better term, stick a cattle prod out there and get a little juice going so we can get, momentum building up.
Yeah, so I'll go backwards on the things that you've noted. I think that we'd be happy to add something like a percentage completed column, with the understanding that I don't think that it can be completely precise for some of these, but it can give you at least a feel for how close we are to finishing something. And I think there's some really good ways to do that we could work between the department staff and the Davenport staff to come up with something that would be helpful to you and to the state board and to us too. As far as things that the board could do, I think that it wouldn't hurt anything to add in the notes attention to the local board or to the state board on things they could do to be of help. And it would probably be particularly relevant to the local board, because if the state board needs to do something to be of help, then we're pretty consistent about calling it out to them. But we'll add local board notes if that's helpful.
Yeah, I would greatly appreciate that. And even the percentage part of it, like even if it's in like stages, we're in stage 1 with this, stage 2, stage 3, and then stage 4 is completion or something like that, just so we kind of have a way to track that.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. And then as far as disproportionality goes, I know that it is not a topic that comes easily to a lot of people. And we'd be happy to do a workshop on it for the board. We'd be happy to do multiple workshops on it for district folks. And I have worked in that particular area, doing data analysis in that area for over 10 years, and it's still not something that just, all of the information about it rolls off the tongue, right? So if that's going to be helpful, we are happy to schedule those things.
Okay. So I know from like myself personally, I would like to do a board workshop on it, but then even, building onto that, have a workshop another time with the administration, with the board, and then maybe I would be more than willing as a board member to participate in some with the staff, just because you're getting different perspectives from all different. I think the only way we're gonna to achieve anything on this, we're gonna have to rip the Band-Aid off and dive in, and just start picking at the scab and getting it done. So I would greatly, myself, I think that would be beneficial for myself in this, and then that way each person kind of knows where the other one's coming from, and then we can hash everything out and get it out there.
No problem. You guys let me know when you want to get it scheduled, or I can work with Dr. Kabilski to schedule them.
Mr. President, I have a couple questions.
Go ahead, Director Hayes.
Hello, Amy, and thank you so much for joining us, as the others have said.
Hello.
So thank you for opening up the disproportionality issue. I, too, would be interested in a workshop. I know we do have a lot of problems, and we've been cited in Davenport, and I would be one of the first to say that I don't feel in my heart that it's intentional at all, but I think some people just aren't aware of it. And when you know better, you do better. So I just feel that workshop would be beneficial to all of us. And like Director Ghost said, we can kind of see where we are in dealing with this issue to get it corrected, because no one's wanting to live under these conditions, and just kind of have it brought to our attention so we could go forward, as soon as we can on that. One other thing that I missed some of that, what you said about the finances and the steps leading up to it prior to the monthly meetings. Could you go over that again?
Yeah, of course. So finances is number 9 on your sheet. And the goal of adding finances to Davenport's plan with the state board is to have more of an explicit link between the Davenport's local board, the work you do with the SBRC, because you have a plan with them, the work that you do for just locally between what the administration kind of reports locally on a monthly basis, and then the fact that we have to report everything back to the state board on a nearly monthly basis. There are a few months that they don't meet in the year, but it's almost monthly, so that everybody's hearing the same thing all the time. I feel we've been playing a little bit of telephone, because something will happen at SBRC and then the state board hears about it after it happens at SBRC. We're not, we want to make sure that you all are getting financial reports in a format that is what any expert school business official would use, so that what's going to the SBRC. And all of that information is given to our team and to the state board on a consistent basis. That way, sort of like all the parties know what's happening on a monthly basis.
Okay. Thank you. Another thing, too, and kind of piggybacking on what Director Beck said, I appreciate the you all understanding that we have really been inundated with a lot of information. And as far as the district data, it's not that we're not wanting to know, but like you said, there's been a lot of other things going on. So that was just a recent request by a few not too awful long ago to start requesting more information. But I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that I appreciate that you all are aware of what's going on with us. And the last thing I had was on number 12 with the bullying. With that, I'm not even sure how to respond to it, because what we have in our policies as far as bullying, the written text does not always match the student or the individual's feelings. Because if I feel that I'm totally wrong than being bullied, and it doesn't meet the criteria that you have on the list, who's to say that I'm not being bullied? I was surprised by a situation not too long ago where a family told me that their child woke up on a Saturday morning crying. When she woke them up, they were crying because they didn't want to go to school. And she's like, it's Saturday, you don't have to go. And she took a few minutes to calm her child down and figure out what was gone. However, this child is dealing with these particular feelings about school because of what someone's doing to him, but it's not reflected in our policy. What is it that we can do, or how do you suggest that we handle those type of situations? Because the criteria that you set out for me, that means that I'm being bullied, if it doesn't meet my feelings, where's the mutual ground that we can address this and do something about it?
Right. And So that's a really common question about what violates Iowa bullying and harassment law and what might still violate a school policy. So the first thing to know is that the only thing that needs to happen for a student to file a complaint of bullying or harassment is for them to perceive that it has happened to them. And they can file a complaint, and they need to be able to file that complaint. So there's no gatekeeper for that. In order for it to violate Iowa bullying and harassment law, that's what you have in your district policy. But you can have other policies about student conduct. And so there's that law that's in Iowa Code 280. But you can also have a policy about other things, so that just because it doesn't rise to the level of violating that particular section of code doesn't mean that some behavior is not frowned upon or even requires a consequence. And then the other way to look at it is part of the reason that we implement positive behavior interventions and supports is to avoid bullying behavior that may not rise to the level of violating that law. Or even behavior that does rise to that level. But a lot of it focuses around prevention. So there's a lot of things that we can do, but one of the most important things to know is that just because it doesn't break the law, it doesn't mean that it was a good idea or that it doesn't violate some other policy of the school.
Okay, thank you so much for your response.
You are welcome.
Any other questions for Amy?
Oh, go ahead, Kent.
Kent?
Yeah, I got a lot out of some of the board development workshops that we had last fall, and so yes, I definitely like to see that continue. Also, the meetings that some of us attended in Des Moines last fall, I think were very helpful. When it comes to some of these items that you brought up, Amy, I think we need to delve deeper into much deeper into them and get also a better understanding. When you're talking about PBIS, disproportionality, MTSS, community and parent engagement, I think for me personally, I need more input in those areas. As you brought up, we have been really focused on finances, and we can't let that go to the wayside either. We've got to keep that in front of us also. But with the support of you and the state board and using the resources like the Iowa Association of School Boards, I think it will be a plus for this board, and I'm looking forward to getting deeper into some of these concerns.
Thank you. And Kent, I would tell you that we are happy to give you all a crash course in any of these acronyms that we keep throwing at you anytime. And another resource you have is Sandy Schmitz. She's pretty darn well versed in most of the things that you just mentioned. So between the resources that you have at the department and Sandy, I think that we can help you with all of those definitions if you would like workshops or any of those things.
Director Kleinstrom?
I have a question about timeline on this. So if we at a year from now have checked off 1 through 12, is that the expectation that we will complete all of these in 1 year's time?
So yes, ideally, it's the expectation that you will have completed all of these throughout this year with our collaboration. We do not expect you to do it on your own.
Sure. And then I guess as a board member, can I be confident in the fact that, okay, we've done now these 12 plus all the others that you'd given prior to this, that you aren't going to come back with another list of 12 for us to do for another year? I mean, when does it stop becoming and we're going to add this and this and this?
Yeah, so first I would say that the only thing that we've added to this list is bullying and harassment. The rest of them were things that you were supposed to have done last year or the year prior. So once these are done, I think you can be confident that the State Board of Education would take our recommendation to restore your full accreditation.
Okay. I also have a question, and you mentioned the individual career development plan. Does that only apply to teachers, or do administrators also have a career development plan?
Administrators should also have a career development plan.
Okay, because in your document, it only listed teachers. And then my other question is about your comment with peer review. Do I understand it right that peer review is used as part of an evaluation tool?
No, peer review is only for the purpose of teacher development. It's not an evaluation tool.
And it is confidential between the teacher and the teacher?
I believe so, yes. I will double check myself on that because I don't have the code in front of me, but it is not an evaluation tool.
Okay, I didn't think it was, but then when I was reading the box next to what you'd listed, it got into performance and, you know, whether they need improvement. And I thought that was not something that peer review was supposed to be a part of. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Amy? Director Gosa, questions?
Yes. Ms. Williamson, I have hopefully to be my last question, but and so in my mind, I'm thinking that we have to get all this stuff done this next school year to get our accreditation back. Is that kind of the game plan, or is this going to take another, couple years? I mean, I understand the disproportionality aspect. That's going to take some time. But I'm talking about to get our full accreditation back. I see this next school year as our make or break year, whether we're making adequate enough progress for yourself and the state board, or it looks like we're not taking it as serious. Am I correct kind of in my assumption? Or I don't even know if you can say that or not, but.
Yeah, I don't know that it's my place to say because it's really a state board decision. I think what I can say is that no one has ever said that they want to see Davenport fail. Everyone has said during this entire situation, what resources do we need to put forward to make this a success for Davenport? So I don't know that make or break is even the way that I would characterize it. I would say this is a year that you're going to put in hard work again, and you did that the last 2 years. And I have said before publicly and privately to you and to other members of the board and members of the administration, I think we're going to have a long relationship, and I hope it's a collaborative relationship. And I understand that it's important to have full accreditation back. I think that you're going to get there, and I don't know when that'll be. But no one's looking to give up on you and have a make or break date, right? We're trying to figure out how to make this work.
Okay. I guess for myself, I kind of misrepresented what I was trying to say. First and foremost, we have to make sure we're servicing all of our students and giving them everything they're owed, So as soon as we start doing, that, we're definitely back on the right track. I just didn't know if, that was like a kind of thing that, you know, the state board is like, well, hey, if they're not taking it serious enough and, you know, getting this much stuff done, then I just don't want anybody to think that we're sitting idle, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
Sure, and I don't believe that that anyone thinks that the district is sitting idle.
Okay. And then I guess my last question, what can we as a board do to better help either move the process along or help facilitate things, or what can we do at our level to ensure, I guess, there's not any roadblocks to getting this stuff done, or helping with whether it be policies or directives from the board for our, because I mean, we're going to have the superintendent evaluation coming up, and you know, we can give kind of our game plan on how we see next year going. Is there certain things that we as the board should try to focus on with giving that directive, or do you have any recommendations along those lines?
So I guess my recommendation would be this. Imagining that the State Board of Education approves this plan as is, doing this work is more than a full-time job. This is a really heavy lift to ensure that you have a functional multi-tiered system of supports in place across a district your size. And that includes PBIS, and that you are sustaining the special education work. That special education work really can't be sustained and go as far as it needs to go without the collaboration of general education, right? And so my recommendation would be to have a singular focus on the things that are listed here, and to make sure that the things that you're doing are evidence-based, and that the board has an eagle eye on finances. It's really, so it sounds simple, right? Because it's just a couple of things. But those are just singular focus on getting those things in place and watching the money.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Amy. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you for giving up some of your Monday night.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to do it.
I have another question. This is Director Beck.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Amy, one of the things that I've been thinking about is the Return to Learn plan that we are that the district is putting together, and board members have participated in for the fall. And it seems like to me this is actually an excellent opportunity to get some systemic buy-in on some of these things. Do you have any feedback or thoughts on that possibility that maybe now is the time to work on some of these disproportionality issues, since we are putting into place some very specific things that are meant for the fall, but really, if it's done well, should be done long term?
Yeah, so I actually think the Return to Learn plan and the things that you're trying to do as a district, for instance, early literacy and managing behaviors, and catching kids up in general, fit very nicely together. Catching kids up as a general case and catching them up because they were out of school for a pandemic are the same thing. So if you're writing a good Return to Learn plan, you kind of know how to do it for the general case for kids who need to be caught up. And that's generally what you need to know how to do to operate a good MTSS system. You're closing achievement gaps.
Okay, so it really is, we do have this opportunity here that if we can put into place some of these things, we may have a chance to get some buy-in that maybe we didn't have before. Some urgency, I guess, is the right word.
I think so. I don't think they're different plans. I think they're really part and parcel of the same work.
Okay, and
my perspective.
Okay. And I guess my other question would be, though, with the national events that have been happening recently, it seems like, there's going to be some additional trauma to deal with, for kids to deal with when they come back. And B, it's a time when people in general are having these conversations on disproportionality. And so I guess I don't want to waste that capital by waiting. So I kind of want to echo what Director Gosa said, that we really should get to work on disproportionality now. I think we have a chance, an opening to do that we haven't, that doesn't come along. It's unfortunate, but it's there. And so I think it would be important to sort of get started on that, even if it's just at the board level. So I'd be all for participating in some of that work now.
Great. If there are any ways that we can support you now, please just let us know.
Thank you, Amy, very much for spending the time with us. I think the conversations we've had this evening have been very productive. They've been enlightening, and you've been able to bring a little focus to the report that you're going to give to the state board on Thursday. But thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Have a great evening.
We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is board reports on the Return to Learn committees.
Amy Williamson is now exiting.
Who'd like to share first? Okay, I will. I'm on the Facilities Committee, and I was at one of the meetings this Tuesday online, and a couple of just impressions. The number of people engaged in the whole process was surprising to me. There's just a ton of folks. Their structure and organization is pretty well laid out. They have subgroups and subcommittees that are working on what appeared to me to be detailed, substantial plans for things, far in excess of what I really might have expected. I had a little trouble computer-wise. I couldn't get into the node catch and the team agendas because I didn't have permission. So we've cleared that up. I now have permission. But it was really good. We had a beginning meeting, then they broke out into their groups, and I could hop from group to group. And then at the end, they had a wrap-up meeting, sent out more information today. Apparently got some additional information from the state last day or so and sent that out. I haven't been able to read all of it yet, but there's quite a bit of stuff. And the awareness that was expressed of their need not only to work in their groups, but they recognize the overlap in some of the things they're doing with some of the tandem teams that are working in the other categories. And upfront and acknowledging they're going to have to touch base and reach out to these people to make sure that the completed plan flows and everybody's on the same page, which is the cliche we're throwing around today. You get on the same page. But it was very impressive, very impressive. And when you consider that they're doing 3 plans, it's even more daunting. And that's my report. Next.
Mr. President?
Oh, Dan raised his hand first. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay. I'm on the equity committee, and then I'm on the I just forgot the name of the subcommittee. But I did find
At-risk subcommittee.
Yes, at-risk subcommittee. There you go. The only thing that I didn't so much care for, there isn't anybody at the high school level for that, to get that buy-in. I wish they would have had someone at the high school level to get that kind of input in there. Because, we had several from elementary and then middle school and stuff. And that was one thing, like one of the first meetings that we had, they kind of talked about to get that insight. But all in all, I think there was a lot of great conversation, and I think that's good when you can get good collaboration going in a lot of different aspect. You know, you had some principals, teachers, librarians, you know, so I think it was nice to have that diverse group to get that conversation going between everybody. But all in all, I thought it was a good experience, and I was glad to be able to be a part of it as a board member. I know we, at least myself, I didn't have that ability, and I kind of would have liked that, like you had said, Mr. President, about being able to jump around from different subcommittees. I think that would have been kind of cool to see what conversations were going on in other, you know, because we did have a lot of commonalities from the different subgroups when we did come together as the whole group and stuff. So I think that would have been nice to kind of jump around and see that stuff. But all in all, I was very glad to have the opportunity to do that. And again, it is a huge task to undertake, but I'm very happy with the people we got doing it. I think we can get some good stuff done.
Kent, you were next.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what both of you just said as far as how impressed I was with the staff and how they've jumped into this. I think in our meeting there were 20 plus participants. If there's one thing that just kept coming back all the time, and that was communication, whether it's communicating to parents, the staff, or to teachers. It was brought up that we need to have the teachers continue to fine tune their skills for online learning, not just to put it on the shelf during the summer, but to keep some focus and be ready to go hard come August 24th. Also discussed about what kind of consensus they were having on the action plans, specifically Part A, 1 through 3. And I'm not going to go into details and all that. And then determine actions for getting teachers and community aware of return to learn. It was also brought up that on some of the items, especially for the communication area, to use the state plan or a template from the state and not try to reinvent the wheel. Also on communication, talked about setting up protocols, and when it gets right down to it, the return to learn plan is really our strategic plan for student achievement. Some items, or the items that are coming up for the next agenda, check if the Department of Ed will be providing translation documents, looking at the B1 action item, review proposed communication plan, and then also looking at data collection system. Overall, like I said, I was just totally impressed. There's a lot of information here to absorb, and the one thing that I would like to see, it would be nice when you've got 20 people online. To me, it's I don't think you get into the whole width and breadth of it. I'd sure like to see us all meeting together in the same room, and that also goes for our board meetings. And so I guess I'll ask it right now. I was going to ask it later, but with the permission of the president and the permission of the superintendent, I would like to start attending the board meetings personally. And I think just leave that on a, person-to-person basis, whether they want to attend personally, but or online. But I just don't feel we get into this information that we're working on. To me, doing it online is not as effective as being there in person. Thank you, Mr. President.
Who's next?
Mr. President?
Director Hayes.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I do echo what the three of you have said regarding your teams. Actually, my team is like a group of rock stars as well. We meet on Fridays. I attended a meeting last Wednesday, which they had met the Friday prior to, and there were 2 meetings prior to the actual meeting to get some things worked out that wasn't completed with the time allotted for the initial meeting. Basically, I'm on the SEBH team, and that we're working at, of course, the return to learn like everyone else. We're talking about what will that look like, what factors need to be considered for a safe return for everyone, how would the necessary information be passed out to the families, employees, students, who in the building will be the contact person to meet the emotional needs. If someone has an issue for whatever, we went as far as discussing resources available. If someone came to you and they needed food, okay, where would you get food from? If they needed clothing, whatever that need might be, who's available to address those particular needs versus going to someone and not knowing what to do with it, and there's a lag in the time for having their needs met. Everyone will probably need it at, sometime or another when returning, because we have to face it now that we're all in the new norm and things will no longer be as we know them to be in the past. And when you think about what the adjustment is for us as adults, just imagine how that would look for a first or second grader. What we did last year, we no longer do it. They're basically relearning how to do everything, and how will we meet these needs for them as well as their family. We had a list of 7 disciplines that we've been working on, and through that, they've already worked through 3 of them that have been completed. There's 2 of them now that are currently in progress, and then the other 2 of them will be started at a later date. But the team works well together, and as I found out last week that, rather than leaving something hanging from what didn't get completed in that meeting, they're willing to meet, additional times to make sure that's sorted out and they're on track before the next meeting starts on Friday morning. That's all I have.
Thank you, Linda.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. Karen?
Hello. I am on health and safety, and there are like 10 or 9 or 10 subcommittees that met prior to me actually being able to join. And so last week the people overseeing the subcommittees all met, and I was a part of that. Big emphasis on clean, clean, clean. How are you going to get things cleaned? When are you going to get things cleaned? To the point where, okay, you've got lawn mowing services that may have to be hired because you don't really want those custodians out there having to take care of the grounds and the lawn mowing when they could be in the building cleaning all the high touch points and things like that. The idea of, if heaven forbid, we would have to go to the online classes again in the fall, to allow staff some access into the building so that they could put their lessons together. Not all of them at once, possibly, but in certain classes, like a science class, it's really hard to do it just online. And so how that would look. The nurse. If you've got a sick kid, you don't want the sick kid in the office with a kid who just came down and needed his meds. So how are we going to deal with that kind of situation? How are we going to decide, the teacher shouldn't be the one to have to make the determination, oh, you're not sick enough to go to the nurse. It's like, you got a headache and a stomach ache. Oh, okay, sorry, those are 2 symptoms. You're heading out. But how did they know? I mean, they've thought of lots and lots of things about how this is going to look to keep people safe and healthy. Preschool protocols, apparently parents come into buildings to drop them off and into buildings to pick them up, that maybe that needs to change, so the staff takes the students out. Site license for textbooks, do we need to increase it? Because you can't really sanitize a textbook if you have to share it. Make sure that people are trained in the correct usage of PPE and cleaning and chemicals. Make sure everybody's got the same health and safety plans and they know what those plans are. And a big one, and actually I threw this into the mix, subs need to know all of this. If we're talking about continuing Google Classroom in the fall, whether we're on site or subs aren't comfortable. How do they do Google Classroom if they have no training in it? And how, they need to know all the protocols that we're going to have as far as what are we doing in all buildings for sick kids or cleaning and all of that. So that's a component we just can't leave out. What are we going to do if a teacher does have to be quarantined for 14 days? Who would be virtual teachers if we went into a hybrid model? So, we've raised lots of questions and, thought out some of the ideas that could possibly happen, but there's a lot involved with, the cleaning, safety of everybody, and even kind of crossed over into, I think it's Linda's group in mental health. We all agree. I think the stress level is going to be really high in the fall. If we return, dealing with the possibility of, okay, what if you have somebody here who's sick and they spread it, and how are we going to deal with that? So it was a great committee. They are well thinking about lots of different things to keep everybody safe and healthy.
Thank you. Director Beck?
So I wanted to participate in 2 subcommittees. So I am on the Iowa Academic Standards Subcommittee and the Equity Subcommittee. And since Director Gosa was doing the at-risk subgroup on the equity one, I joined in with the special ed. And I also went to a meeting of the ESL subgroup. So I kind of did some of that jumping around that Director Gosa talked about, and it was actually really helpful because there were things that came up in the ESL meeting that were helpful for the special ed people and things like that. So I'll talk about the Iowa Academic Standards one. Well, both teams are great. Lots of people doing lots of great work, and they seem to have it down. The whole Zoom meeting, well, it's on Google Meets, but people learning how to raise their hands and using chat when it's appropriate to type things in. And I felt like they were all very productive meetings. The facilitators are really good, coming with agendas and things like that. I also had a little issue accessing the documents at first, but I got it sorted out. So the Iowa Academic Standards Group is talking about how we can do pre-assessment, make sure that we know where students are at the beginning of the year, and then how to catch them up and where they need to be throughout the year. And there's some state requirements for when that reporting needs to be done. And so it's been a lot about sort of figuring out that communication piece, so it overlaps with some of the infrastructure group. And of course, equity is involved in all of these, because once everything's set up, you have to make sure that it's accessible for everyone. And I know on both of those committees, I was sent a link to an article called The Opportunity Myth. And I'm not sure if all the board members on all the subcommittees were given that article, but it was really informative. It's a consulting group called TNTP, and they have a lot of resources. As far as I can tell from their website, they may work with the state of Iowa, or they'll work with districts. But they have a lot of really excellent resources. So we were also discussing sort of how to not reinvent the wheel, how to take advantage of things that are already out there, assessment tools that are already out there, changes in scope and sequence so that you can make sure you catch students up. And it was really good for me. I felt like I could be an active participant in those as a board member. You know, what could I do to help support some of this stuff in terms of making, you know, what kinds of funding would need to happen for these kinds of things. But also as an educator, I was able to sort of pop in my 2 cents on some of these as well. But I would recommend to the board, if you haven't done so, to read that article, The Opportunity Myth, and I'll make sure Mary sends the link out, because it was a real eye-opener on the best way to sort of catch students up and make sure that we are graduating students who are ready for college and actually can do the things that we think that they can do, or we want them to be able to do. But again, both of the subcommittees I've been on are just doing fantastic work. It's a lot of work, and there's a lot of protocols that are going to have to be developed in the next couple weeks. But everybody they've sort of broken it down into separate subgroups, come back together, sort of figured out, okay, we need a task force for this, we need a task force for that. And so I've been really impressed with the organization and the amount of work that's been done just in the couple weeks that I've been participating. So, and I've been to multiple meetings a week for each subcommittee, so they're not sitting around. That's it.
Thank you very much. Good reports. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I think Dan has something.
Mr. President, I have one thing I forgot, and then I'll do it.
Go ahead.
When we had our meeting, and Linda will recognize this, one of the things we were talking about was doing a YouTube channel for some of this stuff. And Linda, I think we brought this up 3 years ago, and it just now started getting talked about. And I was like, well, that's cool. Now we're gaining some traction. Maybe they'll do something with it, because everybody wants to watch YouTube on this stuff. But I just wanted to ask Dr. K, would you be able to send an email out? And from the sounds of what every board member has said, kind of thanking the different committee members for their hard work, so they know the board, we talked about it, and admiration and appreciation goes a long way, especially in these times. So they understand, we do understand the hard work they're doing, and we do commend them for that.
That's something that I try to do as often as I can, to include the weekly videos that I do. But I will make a special note that the Board of Education would like to extend their thanks to, as you said, the well over 100 people that are working on this particular project. And on behalf of everyone who is on that project, we'd like to extend our appreciation to the board for getting involved. You not only get a front row seat to the work that's being done, but you're helping us with providing feedback, but you're also helping us, given the fact that one of our biggest challenges is we don't have a very kind time frame. We have to get this plan put together and ready to go for the state by July 1st. We have it on the agenda for the school board meeting on June 22nd for the board to approve it. So it's a really fast-paced project considering the heavy lift. So again, my gratitude to everyone who is involved, everyone who's been involved in putting together the process, because as you all mentioned, the process is moving along very nicely, and now the product is coming together, and it's coming together with board member help. So as a board, please know that you have our appreciation for your participation.
Mr. President?
Yes. Mr. Postian?
Just a couple questions, and this would be directed towards Dr. Kobilski. And some of these things have come to mind as sitting on these committee meetings and the discussions that we've had tonight. But and then, like Karen said earlier, hopefully we're going with on-site learning, but who knows what's going to happen. My concern, if it's continuous learning, I think it's going to be so detrimental on our special ed students and our English learners and our students at risk. So if it's possible to have a hybrid plan, would it be possible to have the special ed and those groups involved in the hybrid plan so they've got some one-on-one help? Because I just with continuous learning, I don't see really anything happening for those kids. I think they've got to have the one-on-one.
If I may interject, I was just going to say that's actually one of the things that the special ed subgroup was talking about, but I'll let Dr. K address it.
So in a perfect world, we would be on site and we would be looking at school as it has been, although we've learned quite a bit over the last 2 months that I do believe will change us forever for the good with regard to how we can utilize digital and online capabilities. As I envision the startup for the school year and again, one size fits all, we know that doesn't work for any of our students. I envision a hybrid model in the sense that for the students, and if health conditions allow, get them into an on-site format in front of their teachers. We have to make sure that the health and safety pieces have been taken care of. And I have every confidence that committee will help us move forward with that. But we do know that there will be some students and some families that have fragile health conditions in their home that aren't going to feel comfortable sending their students to school, and for personal family reasons would prefer a continuous learning online platform. So, Mr. Pawson, to your question, I think that the best case scenario for us is to serve the needs of the students depending on what those needs are. And if that is on site, let's strive for that. If we have some families that are concerned with an on-site model and feel that they need to keep their students home, given conditions, we have to be able to service those students also. So at the end of the day, I do envision a hybrid model, but we have to do both sides of that hybrid model very well and close the gaps for all of our students. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, would we get in trouble with the state if it's all on-site learning except for special ed and, again, English learners, students at risk? If they were the only ones that attended school, you could spread those kids out, you could spread the teachers out. Would that be a big no-no from the state?
So we have to approach, this whole process from an equity perspective and make sure that every student has access and an equitable opportunity for education. If some students, that means that on-site is the only way that they can get there or legitimately get what we know will be a requirement. Everyone is required to go back to school on August 24th, regardless of what the platform is. I would think that the state would be very flexible on what the possibilities are, as long as we're meeting the needs of all of our students in an equitable manner. If we could present a model in that format, whatever that hybrid model looks like, I have confidence that the state would have an understanding of the fact that we're trying to meet the needs of all students. And if we could present it in that vein, I wouldn't expect us or any district to, quote unquote, get in trouble.
Okay, thank you.
I also have a question. Okay, so we're all back at school, but there are a few parents who choose that's just not for my student. And is there a way that the teacher, because I'm not 100% well versed in Google anything, that like the kid could log in and participate in the class 100%, but off-site through Google? Is that a possibility? I don't really know, so.
The answer is yes, it's a possibility. I wouldn't suggest that every single teacher has that capability to do that. So for the sake of argument, if you had a student taking Algebra 1, perhaps we set up a virtual Algebra 1 class for students who aren't coming on site. It doesn't mean that we don't have that opportunity for other students, but I think we could focus on particular students who are deciding for whatever personal reason not to come to school. Certainly wouldn't make a heck of a lot of sense to scatter them around to, 8 or 9 different Algebra 1 teachers. Let's focus on
Okay.
our 2 Algebra 1 teachers who, to your point, are have a very high acumen for online learning, and maybe those are the teachers that work with the online students. So we have some flexibility to build a model that way.
Okay. And it could be that, let's say, all high school teachers or all high school students that need Algebra 1 would take it from a teacher in building X, even though that may not be their home school. I mean, that is what you're thinking about?
I think we
Or-
need to build that flexibility into our plan to see what the need is. I can't foretell how many students do not feel comfortable coming to school on that very first day of school, but I think we have to plan for an eventuality that we will have enough numbers. We want to make sure that we have teachers that can engage those students